Let me share something. And normally, what you want you guys to do, trying to share something. It's actually going through all these languages, how you can use them and the like. Okay, so that's what we are going to do, and that's what we are going to use. So let's talk about the dynamic content and the web, the dynamic content and the web. You know that in web development, there is what we call static website. Can have a static website or can have a dynamic website. So there are two types of web pages. The one might be static and the other one might be dynamic. So a static site provides hyperlinked text and perhaps a login screen, but beyond that, it doesn't require additional participation from the user. Can you make sure that all our mic are on mute? I'm hearing a background noise. Make sure that we switched off our camera as well as our microphones. Because that feedback will disturb me. Will disturb me. Okay. So what we are saying here, there is what we call a static website. A static website does nothing than just providing the information to the user. It's just there, no interactivity, but just displaying the information to the user. That's what we call a static website. So I want to move from that side to have something which is dynamic, where the user can come, input the information, and then get the result, request this, and do this. So in other words, dynamic means that the user interacts more with the website beyond just reading pages, and the website responds accordingly. So with the dynamic pages now, you can request some information, you can interact with the page, and the website will be actually responding. Like you request something from someone, and then the person will respond, will give you something. That's what the dynamic website will be doing, or a dynamic web page. So it's important for us to know that. So three components are required for creating. Three components are required for creating and running dynamic web pages. So what you need is the web server, and then you need the server-side programming language, and then a database, So there's a lot of literature to read here, Tim, on this module. But for this tutorial, specifically pinpoint on explaining what are we going to use and why do we need that. Like I'm going to explain why do we need HTML, why do we need CSS, why do we need JavaScript, and why do we need PHP, and how can we use almost all those languages. So we do need some of like the PHP, we do need it for creating the dynamic web page. You need the server-side programming language, and for us we are using PHP. And then also you need a web server. For a web server, normally you run your websites local. At this level, it do not require you to buy a server and then you upload your thing there. So you can just download XAMPP or WAMP server, and then after installing it, and then you can run your website on your server. So as for me, I was using the XAMPP server, and then I ran into problem with the MariaDB, with the database. So I just to switch it to AMP now. So I'm sure that it's done on installing. Let me see if I can. Not sure. Yeah, it's done. So that's what you want there. You want the web server, and then you want the server side programming language, and then a database. Okay. So let's talk about the PHP and the MySQL place in web development. Why do we need the PHP and the MySQL in web development? Why do we need that? And what do you think we need that? Anyone to respond here, Tim? Why do you need PHP? Why do you need MySQL in web development? Why do we need that? Fazai, why do you think we need the PHP? Why do you think we need MySQL?
I think we need them to make some codes for the database where we store our database.
Okay. Ayanda, why do you think we need PHP and MySQL?
I think we need them to provide fast web pages response.
Okay, not quite correct. Then, Rigo, there's someone who is Rigo there, Rigo. Why do you think we need the PHP and the MySQL on your website or on your web development? Why do you need that? Lokadia.
I think to create a dynamic content databases.
So your database will be acting as your data store, right? Maybe you want to create a login system. So whenever someone tries to log in, want to check their details for authentication if they are correct. So your database will be acting as your data store there. And that's why you need MySQL database. You can exchange it with any other databases that you know. But for this module, you are just using the MySQL just because it's the one that you also done in your database design module. So it will be acting as your data store. Whatever you want to store within your system, you store it on your database. So that's why we need the MySQL there. And then the PHP now comes as the server-side programming language. It's the one that will be actually doing the talking to the database. It's the one that we use to retrieve, maybe to store the data on the database. Maybe you want to do the server-side validation. It's now the PHP there. There are other languages that you can substitute for PHP, but for this module, we are just using the PHP. You can even use Java, you can use Python. The list is endless, but for us, we are going to use the PHP. So PHP and MySQL make creating dynamic websites simpler, easier, and faster. So PHP is a programming language or a scripting language designed to generate web pages interactively on the computer saving them, called a what? A web server. So this issue of a web server, team, I'm sure you are familiar with. You need a web server. So a web server is just a machine which will be there to save all the requests that you want. So PHP code runs between the requested web page, the requested page, and the web server, adding to and changing the basic HTML output. So what it does, whenever you send a request to the server, the PHP code is the one that runs there, which will be extracting the information from the what? From the web page, and then sending the what? Sending the response, maybe it the HTML response or be it the data that you need, and then you display it on the screen. You need PHP for that. You need PHP for that. So where PHP is great for developing web functionality, it is not a database. So you need what? The database. So the database of choice for PHP developers is MySQL, which acts like a filing clerk for PHP processed user information. So what are the advantages of using PHP with MySQL? So MySQL is easily accessed from what? From PHP, and they are commonly used together as they work well. Work well hand in hand and run on various computer types and operating systems, include Mac OS, Windows-based PCs, and the Linux there. Also, the PHP and the MySQL, they always work well together. PHP and MySQL have been developed with each other in mind, so they are easy to use together. Like if you want to integrate PHP and the MySQL there, it is actually easier than actually connecting it with other databases. Because when PHP was developed, the MySQL and MySQL, they were actually developed with each other in what? In mind. When you have this function, how is it going to communicate with this? Okay, when you have this one, how is it going to communicate with the MySQL? So the programming interfaces between them are logically paired up. Working together wasn't an afterthought. Okay. But those people will be joining late, they'll be causing some problems here. Okay, so it's like trying to connect the PHP and the MySQL. It's not something that came up after having those two things, like having the PHP and then having the MySQL on the other end. But from the development, it was almost something that was actually being thought of. So the PHP and the MySQL have open source power. So both the PHP and the MySQL, they are open source. Therefore, it's an open source code. You can just go there and you do your improve. Hey, what's happening here? You can just go there and then you can just do an improvement, or anyone can actually contribute to PHP or to MySQL. Also, you can take and can use it. You don't need any license. So it's an open source there. You know about the advantages and disadvantages of an open source projects. So they are free to use. So that's it on the, also there is the community support. Do not want to waste time on these things, but you can always go through them. So let's talk about the components. Let's talk about the components of a dynamic web application. What do we need on a dynamic web application? So we now understand there are three main components to creating a dynamic web pages, which is a web server, a server-side programming language, and a database. So in this course, we are going to use the Apache web server, and this web server, you can use it on XAMPP or on WAMP. And then the PHP is server-side programming language, and then MySQL is your database. So you need to download and install these three, either as one suite or separately. Either as one suite or separately. So the best way is just to download as one is to just go and download the WAMP or download the SAMP, and then you'll be having everything there. It's just a matter of starting the server and then starting the MySQL and the like. So first, Apache needs to be installed and operational before PHP and MySQL can be installed, or else they won't work correctly. So the idea is, when you need to install the Apache server, after that, install the PHP and the MySQL. But once you install the WAMP server, the SAMP server, it comes with everything: the PHP, the Apache server, as well as the MySQL, though there will be Maria database there, MariaDB database, no problem. It's still an SQL database. So now our pages can potentially have information coming from HTML files that references CSS, PHP templates, and a MySQL database all at once. So once we have all these things, you now have your what? Your web page. And that web page, normally we know that the web page is built on what? HTML, and then you can have the CSS. We're going to talk about this. You can have the CSS for styling, and then you can have the PHP templates, maybe for the server side, or maybe you want to do something there using PHP, and then also you can have the MySQL database. So let's talk about if you want to request a data from a web page, you want to request data from a web page, how the process actually take place. So how all of these pieces integrate together can be tricky to understand, but you have to understand it. So if a web server detects a PHP code, it determines whether the file is a PHP file, and if so, turn over the processing of the page to the PHP interpreter without any additional participation by the web browser. So it's like the server actually check if it actually saw the PHP code. It will check if the file is what? It's a PHP file. If it is a PHP file, then it will start to process the PHP. Whenever it gets to the HTML, it then starts to process the HTML. It will be switching just like that. So, but if you include an external CSS file, your browser issues a separate request for the file before viewing the page. So before viewing the page, it will go to the CSS file, and then it will take all the CSS, and then after that, it will render the page according to the CSS file that you have there. Then let's see the PHP interpretation on the server. So this processing of the PHP on the server is called server-side processing. We call it server-side processing because normally all this is done not on the client side or on the user side. It is done on the server side. It's a server-side thing there. So you say we call it what? The server processing, server-side processing. So when you request a web page, you trigger a whole chain of events as shown below. Whenever you request a web page, this is what happens. You are here with your computer. And then on this computer, you are just writing this request. You want the directory HTML file under this domain phone.com. So you want the directory there. So you just typed that here, and then you press enter there. Then the request goes to the web host. So to your web server, to the hoster, the computer that you've got what? Your website. That's the web server there, or the web host. So once the request reaches this end, then we have got the PHP here waiting for this request, which is the web server process there. So the web server will process according to your request, and then we've got the data store here, which is our database here, and then we retrieve the what? The information that you want, the directory.html file that you want, and then we send the response back to you, and then you now view what? The directory there here. So that's what happens whenever you Google something. This is the procedure. This is the process that happens here. Just send the request to the web host, and then the server-side language there we process, and then we retrieve the information that you want from the data store, and then it will send the response, just like that. So that's what happens there. So the process are as follows. One, you enter a web page address in your browser's location bar, and then your browser breaks apart the address, sends the name of the page to the web server. For example, for this one, would request the page directory, and then after that, a program on the web server called the web server process takes the request for directory.html and looks for this specific file. And after that, the web server reads the directory file from the web server's hard drive. And after that, the server returns the contents. And then and after that, your web browser uses the HTML markup that was returned from the web server to build the rendition of the web page on your computer screen, just like that. So the HTML file called directory.html requested in here is called a static web page. It is static because everyone who requests the directory.html page gets exactly the same page. You see, the HTML file, once you requested this one, it's just the page that you are going to get. So it's a static, nothing there that you can change. Also, it's just the page that you want. So it's just the static web page. So there is the PHP interpreter, MySQL, and the web server cooperating to return the page. So this is the part of it now. Okay, so on this one, there wasn't the PHP here. It was just the request of the page, and then you send back the page. Okay, so with this one now, there is the PHP part. It's now like you are requesting, you want to log in. So whenever you want to log in, you are sending the what? The request, and then to the web server. The web server then here, what do you do then? We'll go to retrieve the information, and then we have the interpreter here, the PHP interpreter here, that we have here. And after that, we have got the MySQL database. This MySQL database is linked with what? With that disk where it stores the information. So this PHP interpreter, what does it do? It would actually checking, is this the authentic person to log in? Are these the authentic details that you have supplied? And then it will work with the MySQL and the server to determine that, and then it will send the what? The response. And then it will send the response, just like that. So the steps in this chain are as follows. You enter a web page address in your web browser location, and then we do the same. We send the name of the page to the host, and then the web server process on the host receives the request for login.php. So the web server reads the login.php file from the host's hard drive, and then after that, the web server detects that the PHP file isn't just a plain HTML file. So it tasks another process, the PHP interpreter, to process the file, and then the PHP interpreter executes the PHP code that it finds in the text it received from the web server process. So include that code calls to the MySQL database. So PHP asks the MySQL database process to execute the database calls. and then the MySQL database process returns the results of the database query. Then the PHP interpreter completes execution of the PHP code with the data from the database and returns the results to the web server process. You see the dynamic part of it. You're now able to check the login details from the database, and then you do the processing there. After that, you can return the result, just like that. So your web browser now uses the retained HTML text to build the web page on your on your screen, just like that. So let's talk about coding with PHP. Coding with PHP. How can you code with PHP? Team, I've actually started with the PHP because I do think that with the HTML is up to now, we are good to go with the HTML. I would just go through it, but not that deep. Just want to focus on the PHP part. Okay, so coding with the PHP. Once PHP, MySQL, and Apache are installed, you are ready to begin your coding. So let's talk about how you can escape to PHP. Maybe you were in the HTML document and you now want to escape into PHP. Now want to tell the interpreter that this part is a PHP code. How can you do that? So the PHP parsing engine needs a way to differentiate PHP code from other elements in the page. So the mechanism for doing so is known as escaping to PHP. So there are 4 ways to do this. You've got the default tags, you've got the short tags, the script tags, and then the AP style tags. You can always choose what you want to use there. But those are 4 ways that you can incorporate your PHP with other HTML elements. So let's talk about the default tags. So the default tags are perhaps those most commonly used by PHP programmers due to clarity and the convenience of using them. So you start with what? This, and then you put PHP, and then you close with a question mark and then angle bracket there. And then whatever you write in between these tags, you'll be taken as what? As PHP. You'll be taken as PHP, just like that. So these tags may also be the most practical ones because the initial escape characters are followed by the PHP keyword, which explicitly makes reference to the type of code that follows. So this can be used. This can be useful because you may be simultaneously using several technologies in the same page, such as JavaScript. Server-side includes and PHP. So we are saying this one is actually much clearer that you can see this block is what is for PHP, and then this one is for JavaScript, and this block is for the HTML part. So it's far much useful to use this escaping sequence. Okay. So let's talk about the short tags. So the short tag style is the shortest available for escaping to PHP code. You can just put this angle bracket open, and then you put the question mark, and then you close with this one. Everything in between will be regarded as PHP. Excuse me. But short tags must be enabled in order for them to work. So there are 2 ways to do this. Include the enable short tags option when compiling PHP. Enable the short open tag configuration directive found within the php.in file. So you need to do the extra work there if you want to use the short tags. It's one of the shortcomings of the use of using this using short text. And then there is the ASP style tag. You can use them to escape to PHP. And then what you need there is just this and this closing part. Everything in between will be regarded as the PHP code. So there is this part of PHP variable and data types. I'm sure what are variables, what are data types. I'm sure you are now good on all these things since you've been programming in C, C++, maybe in Java. Are you guys doing OOP, object-oriented programming?
Yes.
You are doing OOP.
Yes.
Okay, so you are good with all the. So you are good with all these things. Maybe 1, 2, 3 things, but so suppose PHP provides support for 6 general data types, which is the integers, the floating point numbers, strings, arrays, objects, and the booleans, which is the true or false there. Which is the true or false. So there is the issue of these identifiers. Maybe this is the part that you need to know. Like what's the legal identifier in PHP? Because remember, this one differs from language to language, but the rest will remain the same, but there are some. So an identifier is a general term applied to variables, functions, and various other user-defined objects. So there are several properties that PHP identifiers must abide by. So an identifier can consist of one or more characters and must begin with an alphabetic letter or an underscore. These are the rules. Like if you want to name a variable, so identifiers can only consist of letters, numbers, underscores, characters, and other ASCII characters from. And this one, I'm sure it's just the same with other variables. Identifiers are case sensitive. It's just the same. Therefore, a variable named recipe, look at this character here. If you are in PHP, your variable will always start with this character, that dollar there. So it's different from variables named this recipe and this recipe and this recipe. It's just the issue of case sensitive. Also, identifiers can be any length. This is advantageous as it enables a programmer to accurately describe the identifier's purpose via the identifier name. So finally, an identifier name can't be identical to any of PHP's predefined keywords. I'm sure you know all these things of keywords. But in PHP, your variable must start with this character dollar, that dollar character there. So a variable always with a dollar sign, this one. A variable always begins with a dollar sign. I think this is what I wanted you to know here. Want to write a variable, it must start with a dollar sign. So the following are all valid variables. This one or this one. If you want to join them, you join them using an underscore. It's just the same with all other languages. This one is also legal. This one is also illegal. So take note of that dollar sign character there. So this that's all on dynamic website. That's all on dynamic website. I don't know if you have questions on this part. How you can build a dynamic website and what are the components that you need for a dynamic website. Before we move to the next part of this presentation. Okay. If there are no hands, let me share another slide here. So for the PHP, it's just a server-side scripting language that we use there. Nothing much. So be using it to generate dynamic web pages and to interact with the databases there. And then when you talk of JavaScript, it's just a programming language used to add the interactivity to web pages, including like the user input validation, animations, and dynamic content updates. If actually someone inputs their information on our form, we want to do the client-side validation. That's where the JavaScript come into hand there. Can validate everything. Like if someone inputs an email, can use the JavaScript to validate if that email is actually an email. Just like that. If you say, I want you to put an input as number at this form at this part, if someone doesn't put a number there with the JavaScript, you must be able to see it. That's the client-side part of validation. Okay, so here let's just dive into the PHP part. I'll see if I've got some examples here that we can actually use. So what we want now is to use the PHP and the MySQL, the PHP and the MySQL database. How we can use that, and then the rest, I think, is something that you can do. So let's just talk about the part of just sending a form. You want to post a form to the database. How can you do that using the PHP? I see this is the best way that we can actually practice and how we can actually use the PHP and the database there. Otherwise, for front end, for the CSS and for the HTML part there, I think it's something that is not of much greater challenge there. Okay, so I just need a highlighter. Okay. So the form, when it's submitted, is posted to the web server as form data. So there are two methods for posting this data: the post method and the get method. If you ever guys created a form in HTML, have you ever guys created a form in HTML, like a login form or any form? And have you ever tried to create a form and try to send it to the website? Or I'm alone here?
We haven't tried. I haven't tried.
Hello?
As for me, I haven't tried creating a form.
Okay. What about others? What about?
I haven't tried, sir.
We haven't tried
I've
it.
never. Yes, sir.
Okay.
That was something new to us.
Okay. What about others? Because I thought maybe I came across this, which means you are now forced back to the HTML part. I thought on the HTML is you were doing your assignment, you have gone through the HTML part, because that's the basic structure of a website. So maybe we have to go that part, and then we came here later. So for that, let me see if I can share my text editor here. Okay. Yeah. Just let me see. I'm just going to demonstrate on a few things there. Okay. I was thinking that you've gone through all these things. Okay, so what you need here, guys, for me, I'm now using the let me see if I can have. I was using the example, so you just need to go into the example and then you go to the ht.docs file, but now I'm no longer using XAMPP. So I go through my local disk and then I go to the WAMP, and then there is the file called www. That's where it puts all its. So I'm just going to create a new folder here. I need a new folder. Let me just call it demo. So this folder is the one which will be having all my what? All my web pages. It's the one which will be having all my web pages. And then I'll just select that folder. I'm using the VS Code here. I'm going to use the VS Code. So in this, I'm just going to create a new file. Let me just create a new file here. And then this file, I'm just going to call it index. And then I'm just going to call it a PHP file. But you can make it an HTML file, but I want it to be an HTML file. And then this is the structure of your website. This is the structure of your website, like the HTML part of it. This one is just to indicate that the document type is what is the HTML document type. And then you have the HTML tag. This one will be actually wrapping your HTML content. This one is the one which will be wrapping your HTML content. And then this one is the head part of the HTML. This one is the head part of the HTML. Inside your header, that's where you put the meta text or the metadata, data about that. What is it your website about? The description of the website. That's where you put everything there. That's where you put everything there. Then some of the details, I think I will just go through it. That's where you put the title of the web page. Then anything that comes in the body is the one that you actually see on your website. If I run this, it's actually empty. If I come to my, just want to see if I can share my entire screen. Yeah, I just want to share my entire screen. Because I will be switching. I'll be switching on my I'll be switching on my, okay. So I'm sure you are now seeing. So if I go to my, okay, I just want to go to this browser. Where is it? Okay, I do not have any browser open. Okay. So, okay, just want to come here, then localhost. It's what? It's demo, right? So you just say localhost and then demo. You see that we have nothing here. But on this part, we have what? We've got this document. So this document is just this title that I have here. If I call it demo here, just like this, these are now the HTML elements. If I update, you see that there is the demo here. So that's what this title do. And anything that you want to display to screen comes here. Anything that you want to display to screen comes here in your what? Comes here in your, maybe let me say I want to put the H1 tag there and say, welcome to maybe our website. And if I refresh this one, you see that we now have this thing. So basically this is what you do. And this how HTML document look like, or a web page look like. Inside the board, anything that you want to display to screen goes inside the board here. That's where you put your content there. So when you are talking of forms, if you are talking of a form, maybe let's just have a simple form here, and then let's call it maybe login form. And then what we need there is the form element. Is the form what element? Is the form element. So whenever you want to create a form, you just use this element, and then your form, you can give it a name as well. Maybe you can call it login form, and then it have got the action part. So this action part is like, where do you want this data being posted? So you might have a separate PHP file to process that data, or to process that login data, just like that. Or you can do it on this page. So you can just leave it if you want to process everything on this page. Excuse me. But if you want to post it to some page, you just write the name of the page here, maybe as a processor, maybe .php file. That's maybe if it is where you want to send it, just like that. But for now, let's leave that part. It will become complex. So what do we need here? Maybe it's a what? It's a label, right? Maybe just need a label. We do not want it to be complex. Maybe it's just a label. It says name. And then after that, what you want there, maybe it's now the what? The input. You want to take the input, now use the input, and then the type is text, and then need to give the name to that input so that you can actually reference to it later using the PHP name. Maybe you can just say it's what? It's name. So if I refresh on my page, you see that I have this now, where you can actually write your what? Write your name. And then here is what is label. Just like that. Then next you can put, maybe since you want to log in, maybe it's not a name, but it's a what? It's a user name. So there are a lot of things that you can put here. So maybe let's call it user what? Username, and then what else? Maybe you can put the placeholder there if you want. Enter your name. Maybe your username, just like that, but it's not necessary. Then you can have another what? You can have another label. And then now this label, you can call it what? Maybe it's the password part. So that's where you're going to put the password. So for these things, team, I think you need to learn about the HTML and the HTML elements, and then go to the forms elements. There are a lot of elements that you can put here. And there are a lot that you need to put on actually designing this form. So what you need now is the what? Is the input, and then its type is now what? I'm sure it's a password. There is the password, HTML type, and then after that, what you need also is the what? Is the name. And inside that name, you have to also type what? What can you call it? Let's just call it password. Just like that. As simple as that, you are good to go. If you actually refresh this, okay, since here you've got this, enter your name and then the password here. So if you want to make it look nice and what you are now using the CSS part. So now the CSS. So maybe what I want there, I want to have a breaking here. Let me use the break line. I want to break the line. I want to jump. Yeah, so that it should just come there. So there are div tags, there are a lot of things that you can apply so that you can actually send everything and do what? It's now the what? It's now the CSS part. That's where CSS come in what? In hand for that. And then after this, what do I need here? I need the button. I need the button. You want to submit. So I need the what? The button. And then type. It's what? It's submit. It's a submit button. So whenever you click on it, you'll be submitting the form. So I want to, you can write it submit or you can write it login since you want to log in. So whenever I click on this, you submit the form. You see that here, it have actually written the username and the password there. So you'll be submitting the form. So before this, maybe I also need a what? A break. Here, a break statement, yes. And then what else? What else? Here I need the name as what? A submit button. Yes, here let me just call it what? Login. Just like this. So on your form, there is the action. What else? What else? There is the action. What else do you need on our form? There is method, right? There's what we call method. Are you going to use get or are you going to use post method? So if you are using get method, you put the get. If you are using post method, you put what? The post method, just like that. So if I do this, you see that you see some information here. If I change it, maybe to post, let me refresh it. If I post, okay. When it's post, it doesn't show the, if it is post, it doesn't show the data here. So that's the difference between a get and a what and a post method when submitting a form. That's what we're also going to go through here, because we are using the post and the blah blah blah. So the form when submitted is what is posted to the web server as form data. So when you are posting the form, you are not going to post this interface. You are going to post what you are going to submit here. And then there are two methods for posting this data, which is the post method and the get method. So post data is encoded the same way as get data, but isn't typically visible to the user in a standard browser like get. So it's using that whenever I use post here, if I just type something here and something here and say login, if it is post, you don't see anything here. But if I just switch to get, if I'm going to use the get, and then I'll refresh this, and I'll just type my password, and if I say login, you see everything on this part. You see everything on this part. So that's the difference between the get and the post. So get data is appended to the URL. Most forms use the post method because it hides the form data away from the user and doesn't clutter up the URL in the address bar. So post values are unlimited in length and thus are very well suited for what? For forms, since you want to post, maybe if you have that huge form. So especially forms with a lot of what? Of fields. So when you are using get method in a PHP form, get data comes from the URL itself, and you typically follow the name of the script file in the URL, like what you have seen here. Username and its data, password and its data, the submit and its data. Just like that. Excuse me. So the start of get data is indicated with what? With a question mark, as you see here. Then the rest is what is the data for the get. So the name of the field is followed by an equal sign and the value of the field. So the name of the field, the username, this field, and then its data. Then the password with this one and its data. This one. That's what we are talking about then. So each field is then separated by an ampersand, which is this operator, this and that you see here, which is separate each field. So this is what they are demonstrating there. Then let's say if you want to access, now want to access the post data, you have posted the data and you want to access it. So post data is accessed with this global, this array, the $post array in PHP, and this one's a global array in PHP or a global variable in PHP. So for example, is we have a form with the two text boxes for the first name and last name submitted using the post method. What you do now on your form, you have submitted, you have got this form. Okay, this is the form that we have. So we can access using the PHP and then just like this. Like for example, what we can do here, let's come here and just, okay. I normally want to go outside of anything and then I'll start the what? The PHP tag there. If you want to escape to PHP, this is what I think this is what we're talking about. You want to escape to PHP code, and then what do you want here is now you want to just take the first name and then you just echo it. So I want to take the username and just echo it. So what you need there is to use, let me just, okay, is to use the let me just say $username. Let's just create a variable for that. And then we assign, we take the value like dollar post, okay, and then inside here you are going to put what? What's the name of this field that you want to take? It's username here, so you're going to say user name, and after that what you are just going to do here, let's echo out. Let's echo out. Let's just echo out username again. Let's just echo out username. But for this one, we're going to get an error because at first this one will be not defined. So somehow we have to repeat in an if else. You see, we are going to get this error because it's not wrapped, and then can submit there. But this one first, it needs to do what? Because this one, the array key is what is undefined. So I think we need to first actually check if the submit button is what is clicked, and then we can do all this. So you need if is set. So these are some of the things you can use if is set function, and then you can check if the submit button is clicked. Once the submit button is clicked, we can now take the what? The input, or we can now take can now take the field of username and then display it just like that. So here what we can do is just check if dollar post is set. So it's post, if post is what is set, so you are going to check if submit. So if submit is what is set, that's checking if someone have actually clicked the submit. So you have to wrap all this code into this part, and then maybe what I want is this variable, just want it here. Maybe first I just want it to have nothing. Why am I doing so? I just want to take this part to maybe just after this form, I'm just going to have a simple paragraph. And then inside that paragraph, I'm just going to paste the output. So I'm just going to escape to PHP. Just I'll put my PHP there. So all these things, guys, I'm sure you have to go through this, and then I will do my echoing there. So just like this, what I have to do is to refresh. Okay. Let me just refresh it. Then I'll just say what's happening here. That's what username, password. It's not rendering as it was supposed to do, but actually that's what we're supposed to do there. Let me just say username. I just want to see if something is happening here. Okay, so it's not actually rendering something. It's not rendering, it's not rendering, it's not rendering. It's not, but that's the logic there. That's the logic. That's how you can actually take the form data and actually output the form data. Just trying to check if there is another way that I can do it. if there is another way that we can do it. Okay. Let me just try to echo something here before this. Okay, let me just say username, and then we use the string concatenation, and then I'll remove this part here. Okay. Sorry. But otherwise, and then you just write your username and everything, and then it's not actually, but it's actually echoing out. But after submitting, it's not. Those who do code in PHP, are you seeing where I have to modify here? Eh? Are you seeing where I have to modify? Are you seeing where I have to modify, or am I alone on this? Are you seeing where I have to modify?
No, you're not. You're not. You are not alone. We are following up. It's only that we are not very familiar with this.
Okay. I'm seeing where there is the error. I'm using get instead of post here. I'm using. You see here, I'm trying to access the post, but here I was using the get. I was using the get method. So I think that's where the error was. And I'm sure for now we can get something. Sure, we can now get something from that. Yes, you see that we are now getting the username here, just like that. So this is how you can submit. This is how you can actually submit a form to your PHP code, and then you can now use the PHP code to send the data to what? To your database. You can now use the PHP code to send your data to the database, just like that. So maybe here I have to just say the username, and then I'll put the separator, and then I'll just put the username, and then I'll echo out inside my paragraph, just like that. So if you want it to look nice, it's now, you see that we have the username now here, just like that. So if you want it to look nicer, it's now where you apply the what? The CSS. Now where you apply the CSS. If you just come here, you can go to W3 schools, and then maybe if you go to their CSS tutorial, you have everything there. How you can integrate CSS to your website. We have everything there, the selectors, the class, and everything. You have everything from start to end. That's the CSS part. You want your website to look nice. As you see, we have the functionality. We have the structure of the website using the HTML and the PHP only, but it's not looking nice. Now you need the what? CSS, just like that. So if you come here, you have everything here. The syntax, how you can actually run the CSS, how you can integrate it to your HTML file, everything is here. Maybe, for example, I want my paragraph to change all those colors and everything. What I need, maybe you have to come inside this header file, and then you need to you can put the style. This one is one of the ways of putting that, or putting styles inside your document. So you can read the literature behind it. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages of using this type? Because here you are just putting the style inside the document. There is the inline. You can use the inline just going straight. Like here on the paragraph, I can also put a style, and then I'll just incorporate the styles. Like I can just say color, and then I'll say maybe red, and then I'll just terminate there. If I just came here and actually refresh this one, you see that we've got the color red here. It's now the CSS, but it's in a line. I've just put it on the line, just like that. Or you can do it inside here, where you have to use the what? The class of the PHP, and then you can now say color. Maybe you want to say color blue. There, maybe you can use RBG or what colors there. But there's a lot to read on this one. But maybe I have to remove this one, the style that I have here. And then I'll refresh this one. You see that we've got this blue here. So it's now the CSS part. That's how you use the CSS part. You use the CSS part just to design the front end there, to make it look nice. That's when you use the CSS part. For the JavaScript now is for the interactive part. Maybe you want some animations. Maybe you want, if someone click this, some events. Maybe you want to validate, like when I'm putting username and the password. Maybe I want to validate if you have actually entered something here. Like use the JavaScript just like that. It's like each and every language here have got something to do. They've got something to do. So what you want to do now, maybe if you want to use, if you use the get, so I think you've seen the error, the problem that you've actually gone through when I tried to use the get and post mixed. You have an error there. So there is a way of accessing the what? The post data, and then this is the way of accessing the get data. If you are using the get, you are just going to replace the post with what? With the get. Nothing will change there. Just using the what? The get keyword. The get keyword. And then this is the concept that I was actually demonstrating here of using is set. This one. Of using this one is set. This function. For you to check if you have actually clicked the submit button or the form is submitted. Because if you didn't check that, when you run this web page at first, it will actually also run this, but this one will be not defined by that time. This one will be only defined whenever you click the submit button. That's why you have the username key. So you need this is set as a way of checking if the form is actually submitted. So you can use the set function on any variable to determine if it has been set or not. So the function can be used on the post array to determine if the variable was posted or not. So this is often applied to the submit button value, but can be applied to any variable. So for example, if you're using our form in the previous slide, what you have to do, you have to check using is set, and after that, we can now do everything, just like that. So this is how you can submit the form to what? To the PHP. And then if you want now to submit it to the database, what are you supposed to do? Let me, but is there anyone with questions on how you can actually send the form from the HTML to the PHP? Remember, the PHP is now the server side. Is now the one that can actually communicate with what? With the database. Are there any questions here on this part? Okay, if there are no questions, let me and share my screen. I just want to go through my files. I want to see if I got something. So maybe I will stream something that I normally do not want you to see. I'll just reshare. I want to see if I've got the slide. For now, sending to, okay. Okay, I have it. Now I want to send the data now to the database. Now I want to send the data to what? To the database. So let me share. Let's quickly go through the slide. It's not that. Let me just share my entire screen. Okay. So let me put this one in. So PHP and the MySQL interactions. Now we've managed to let the HTML and PHP interact together, sending the forms, sending the data to the PHP from our HTML. Now we want to send the data to the database. And we now want to check if the data in the database, the one that the user entered, and then we can now say you are logged in. Just like that. So PHP, I need my highlighter. So PHP and MySQL interact with each other through PHP and MySQL extension. So we connect to MySQL from PHP using PHP's MySQL related extensions. So there are two types of such extensions for PHP 5.5.0 and higher or later versions since 2012. There is the MySQL where I stands for improved version, or you can use the PHP data object, the PDO. I'm sure if you have tried to use PHP and then the database, you have run into these things. We have to choose. But now the question is, which should I use, MySQL or the improved version or the data objects there? So you are free to use whatever you like. We do not restrict you, but I'll be using the MySQL, the improved version of MySQL. So before we can interact with the database, it should have been created. So the first part is to create the database. So in MySQL, database can be created either through the PHP MyAdmin interface, for example, in WAM server using the terminal interface in Linux to access the MySQL server, or using the PHP code. Then with the PHP MyAdmin, you manually design and manipulate the database using code is automatically created on the background. So with this one, let me see. I think I can go to my WAM server. Let me just show you quickly. Okay. Okay, we have the MySQL part here, the console and the what. Okay, let me just come through this one. Okay, it's just your movement that. Okay, so here is the database, the PHP MyAdmin. I'm not going to use the commands here. I'm just going to quickly create a new database here, and then I'll just say maybe login, and then I'll create. Now I have my database. I just need a simple table, maybe with the 2 fields, and then I'll just okay, I'll just call it user, and then I create the table, and then this table you have the username, maybe the username, and then it will have password, and then maybe the username is just var character. Let me just put this, and let me put a length of 30. Maybe the password, let me put a length of 10. I just want to run into problems there. Let me just put 15 because I'm just typing So that doesn't make any sense. So this is how you can create a database. So the database is now there and the table is now there. If you want to use the SQL, you can just come here and use it through this one, or you can just go through the command line. I think all this one you can configure out. You can figure out on your own there. But you now have the database. What you want to do now is connect to this database. You can insert some data, you can retrieve some data, can do what, but for this one, we just want to log in. So for you to be able to log in, maybe you want to insert some data there. So I'm just going to say maybe S1, and then the password there. Let me just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we have got what? We have got the data in our table. Username is S1, and then the password is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like that. And then what else? Now we have got the database, we've got the table and everything. So that's what we are talking about here. Everything here, that's what you'll be doing there. And then MySQL database creation using PHP. This is, if you want to use the PHP to create the database first, you can design and manipulate a database using the structured query language, the SQL. So these SQL statements can be executed in PHP. Here I've created the manual, but you can also do it using the what? Using the PHP. And then for you to connect to the database, you need this function, MySQL connect. Once you call that, you connect to the database. Once you are connected to the database, you can now create the tables, you can now create anything that you want to create there. So the function takes 3 arguments, the server name, username, and then the password there. For me, I'm just using the default, the root, and then the password is nothing, and then the server name is just a local host or 127 point blah blah blah. I think you know the IP address of the local machine. And then if we have not changed the configurations to the .ini files during PHP and MySQL installation, the default user is what? Is the root with no password. So this is how you can connect to the database, and then you create your database, and then you do whatever you want to do there with that, just like that. So this is the part of it. So maybe what you want here is the server name, username, and password. Can just come in and do all that just up here. Maybe you can have the server name. The server name is what? It's local host. Maybe what you want there. Also want the username and the password. Okay. I'm just confused because we already have the username variable. Maybe you want to change it here. So you've got the username, which is the root, and then you've got the what? The password. So these are for only database. So that's why I was actually getting confused there. Because you already have the password and the username, blah, blah, blah. But these ones are only for the database. These are database for database. So you can put a comment there, just say database variables. Just like that, variables. And then you want the variables to use for now the form data. Let me say form data variables. And then after that, I'm just going to have the username. But now let me just say form username, just as it was initially. And then let me have the form password. like the data from the actuals that you want to pass through, and then I'll use it later. So here it's username, but it's now form username. So it will the updating and everything. So what we want now is to connect to what? To the database. So for you to connect to the database, you now need the connect. You now need the what? The connect, MySQL connect, this function. This is the one that you need. You need to take the server name, the username, and the password. So we can create a variable to save our connection there. And then you can call it whatever you want. And then MySQL I. And then what you need there is the connect function from MySQL I. So it's what? It's connect. This one is the one that you want there. And then from there, you take what? The server name, the username, and the password. So it's what? The server, then the username, and then the password. Which means you now have the connection, but we don't know if it actually connected to the database. This one is enough to connect to the database, but we don't know if it is connected. So we want to know if it have actually connected. So how do you know? You now use the if statement here to check your connection. If it is not connected, then print this error. If it is not connected, then print this error. Then you are good to go. So the error will be in what? In a connect error. That's where you see the what? The error. So just say if, and then here we are saying if not connected, and then if not connected, use the what? The die function. Use the die function, and then inside there, you just put just a string. Maybe it's what? Connection failed. What else? You need now the MySQL, maybe connect error functions, the one that you want there. Connect error function. So you are now good to go. You can now create the database. You can now query from the database. You can now insert to the database, but otherwise for the connection is enough. For the connection is enough. If I try to run this, maybe okay, you are seeing root here. Why? Because okay, you are printing the username, but you see that we do not have any error. So I think here I have to just say, let me just put an else part so that you can see that the database is actually what? Connected. So the else part here, what else can I do? Okay, let me just have a variable. Just need a global variable here because I want to use it just outside. Okay, let me just put it here, and then I'll just say connect, maybe status. Okay. Then first, let me just put it to nothing. And then here, let me just say maybe connect status be, let me just say database connected, just like that. And what I would do, I'll just come in here like what I've done on the form when you are displaying the username and the form username here, like what I was demonstrating. I can just take this paragraph as well, and then I'll just have another paragraph there. But I want it to be inside the the hashtag rather than a paragraph. Let me just say that, let me just say, maybe H3 will do. Let me just say here, I just want to echo out the connect status there, just like that. I'm sure it will solve everything that we need. Where is the error there? Home username. Okay, maybe I've made, this was supposed to be small letter. Okay, so it say database is what? Is connected, which means the database is what? Is connected here. We've actually managed to connect to the database. Was otherwise it was going to give us this error. So yeah, managed to connect to the database. So you can now create the database. You can now do what you want to do with the database. You can send the form data to the database and you can do everything. I don't know you guys if you are following up on this.
So,
Yes,
mine
yes,
is
we're
not
following.
showing the screen.
Which one?
Are you
Which
sharing?
one? Yes, I'm sharing.
But I'm not seeing anything.
So why were you quiet? What?
My network disconnected, so I reconnected. I rejoined the meeting.
Okay, what about on others?
Yeah, we are following, sir.
It's showing.
With a little bit of practice, we'll get acquainted to the system.
Okay, but have you managed to get the idea on what you are doing here?
Yes.
Yeah, we have an idea.
Yeah, so it's now up to you to go and research and up your gear. Because what I wanted actually is just to show you what we are doing and what we are supposed to be doing. Yeah, just like that. You know.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so this is how you can actually do this. Now the part that you are left with maybe is just to send the data to the, but it's now the MySQL, the PHP and the MySQL part. But with the HTML part, I think we are now with the, so here you can create the database. If I'm sure you know this command, create database from the MySQL part, and then you can now actually query this one using the query, the MySQL query function, and then you pass the connection and this one. After that, you close the what? The connection. You're actually good to go. For this one, it's only for creating the database. So if our server is on the same machine, we are using to connect. Then we use the local host or the IP address 127.0.0.1. When I put local host, you can also use that one. It can also work. So it is also important to check for errors during connection and guide users according. If the database failed to connect, maybe you do something. Maybe you try to do something, or you tell the user that you're only getting the audio. Okay, let me reshare it. Okay, are you seeing something now? There's someone who said I'm getting the audio on.
Yes, I'm not seeing something.
Okay.
Thank you so
Sorry.
much.
Okay, sorry for that. I'll just put the recording on there. Okay, I think you have talked for so now almost 2 hours. Okay, so I try to manage so that doesn't do close to us 30 minutes then. So that's it. And then queries are executed by the MySQL. We will use MySQL query function there. And then MySQL server and the string for the query to be executed, or just it's what it's a variable. So the function takes 2 arguments. The link or a connection to the MySQL server, and then the string for the what? For the query to be executed. So it's now the connection and then the query that you want to be executed. You are now sending to the database using MySQL query. Remember, we have used the MySQL connect to connect. For any query inserting or taking some, you are now using the MySQL query. So example one is a procedural way of creating the database. Those who are more experienced with object-oriented programming can use the object-oriented way as in example what? In example 2. Let's see the example 2 here. So this is the one that we are saying you can also use this one. It is still what? It is still work. But if you look at it, you see that there isn't much difference. There isn't much difference there. But otherwise, that's what you do there. So let's now connect to the database. Connecting to the database, okay, it's just the same. Maybe it's just for using this the other way around, but it's just one thing there. So what else do we need here? Maybe let me see if we need something. Don't think we need much here. I'm sure you can always read along these things, but otherwise, this is what I wanted you to actually grasp and understand. So normally that's how you connect to the database. For this one, if you want to insert, now you use the what? The MySQL what? Query, and then you can actually ask the data from the database, or you can insert the data to the database. But for our example here, we're supposed to take the login details and check if they are equal, and then the implementation they would actually long as. So I think you can do just a simple research on that. Because what we're supposed to do here is just taking this username and maybe the password. It's not that I call it what? Form password, right? Yeah, this form password. And then you just take it from the post global array. And then from that one, check the password, right? I'm sure that's. And then after that, you have your data. Now, what you need now is the MySQL what? MySQL. Maybe you first need to form the query, like select from the MySQL query, select from, and then where this is equal to this, and then after getting that, you now do the comparison, and then you can now let someone log in, then you can send him to another page, or you can do what you can do there. But there's a lot that so I think you can follow up on that. It's just an example that I was just thinking of. So for the CSS part, there isn't much here, guys. If you are willing to learn, I'm sure you never have a challenge with these ones. But the CSS, you can go through this. If you go to W3 schools, there's everything there. There's everything that you can learn there. Why using CSS and everything is there. I don't think there is any need for me to go through all this thing. But I'm always there. If you want any help, just ask. I can always help. If you think there's something that you are not understanding, you can always help. Also, if got the JavaScript, okay, well, not this one is JavaScript. Let me just say JavaScript here. If you go to W3 schools, okay. There is everything here. You can go through all this, but what you want you to appreciate is just knowing why do you need JavaScript and how you can basically use it, mostly for validation, and then for all other things, yeah, need it, but you can just do it to, if you want to create some websites there. If you see, I have this website. If you see this website, if you see this website, I'm still populating some information there, but it's one of the websites that I've actually done. So you don't need to learn much to be able to do this. Just if you follow that, you can always do all these things. If you come for this, but I'm still populating the information. You don't need to learn much to be able to do all these things. You can go for these tutorials. So I'm still populating the information, but as you see, don't need to go for the, okay, this one is for the web hosting, okay, but if you want to do web hosting and blah blah, you can actually create your account there and just pay like that, blah blah. But yeah, that's it. Don't need to learn much for you to be able to do all these things. Just though this one I've used the Laravel framework, the PHP framework, but basically that's where you came from. That's where you came from. Just start with these 8 as you go on. So I don't know if there's any questions. If we have some questions, I don't know if you have some questions. Just want to, okay, Thomas.